My nightmare started when I woke up on a park bench in Omaha, Nebraska. My original travel plans were much more adventurous, but most of the vacation fun dried up after the company's CFO found me in his car, with his wife. Turns out she wanted to get caught, to make him jealous or something. That is how, for reasons not totally beyond my control, I ended up summering in Omaha instead of Oahu. But hey, at least they have great fried pickles. I spent most of my time there napping, and that was what brought me to the park bench. I woke up to a bird on my shoe. He was pecking away at the residual crumbs of what may or may not have been fried pickles. "Hey, little guy," I said, smiling down at my visitor. He wasn't a bird of paradise, but at least he liked me. Then the crumbs ran out, and he didn't like me so much anymore. "Fuck you, too!" I shouted as he flew away, off to go play with some other man's heart, no doubt. Just as I was about to settle back into my midday nap, I felt my phone buzz. Finally, I thought, someone to talk to. I was getting sick of just swiping through my home screen pages every time I wanted to look busy. But when I pulled my iPhone out, I found something even more surprising than a text from a friend or loved one. It was an airdrop. Anonymous would like to share some photos. Decline or accept. I looked around. There were people near me, but most of them weren't young enough to know how to airdrop something, and no one was using their phones. I accepted. "What the hell?" I let out before a chuckle. The first picture was of me, slumped over on the park bench, sleeping with my mouth open. I was instantly filled with embarrassment and wonder. On the one hand, it's pretty depressing to see yourself sleeping in an unflattering position, and I had a triple chin thing going in the photo. On the other hand, I couldn't deny that it was pretty funny. I looked up, hoping to catch someone giggling or at least staring in my direction, but I couldn't see anyone who gave the slightest indication that it was them. In fact, by the time I looked up, I was alone. Weird. The second picture wasn't funny at all. It was all black, with a bunch of characters in what looked like Mandarin or some other Eastern language drawn on with the digital marker. A message from the sender. But I couldn't read whatever language it was, and I didn't know how I would go about translating it, seeing as I couldn't just copy and paste the text. So I chose to just ignore the message, telling myself I would go to the trouble of translating it later. God, do I wish I wasn't such a procrastinator. The sun was setting, so I stood up, took one last glance around for any hidden airdroppers, and walked back to my motel. Later that night, I found myself hopelessly scrolling through Tinder. I realized long ago that dating apps can tell you a lot about the place you're visiting, and I considered it part of my cultural experience to judge strangers behind a screen in my pajamas. Mostly, I would just swipe my way through and laugh at the weird corn people without even considering a meetup. But every once in a while I would swipe right if I felt something. I never imagined that I would get anywhere. Then I got another notification, and this time from someone I actually wanted to talk to. It was a girl who looked way out of my league, named Christina. "Hey Greg, if you were on a lifeboat with me, Dwayne The Rock Johnson and the Queen, who was already dead at this point, who would you eat first?" I stared at her message. It was kind of quirky, but I liked it, so I texted back. "Obviously you, because I need The Rock to do all the rowing. The Queen is dead, and you're quite the snack." I smiled, proud of my work. The CFO's wife didn't know what she walked out on. Luckily, Christina liked my reply as much as I did, and we struck up a nice conversation that had me copying the address to a local karaoke bar into my phone an hour later. It was only then that I began to regret my choice of vacation attire and noticed that the bird had shat on my loafers. I ironed the only polo I brought, threw on my sneakers, and sped out. On the way, I stopped to fill up at a Chevron and went in to grab some mints. I thought about buying some banana sleeves, but that seemed a little too boastful. When I went to pay, I dropped some change out of my wallet. Shit. The cashier, some kind of wannabe cowboy like everyone else in that city, smirked. I took a penny from the little plastic dish out of spite before leaving the store. While I was in my car, my phone buzzed. I snatched it up with excitement, assuming it was Christina, but saw a different yet familiar name. Anonymous would like to share a photo. decline or accept. What the fuck? I looked around at the cars in the lot. 2 others were filling up, and about 4 more were parked in front of the convenience store. I wondered whether someone inside the store would still be close enough to airdrop. Cautiously, I accepted. The photo was of me bending over to pick up the change I had spilt, taken from the parking lot. I stared at it for a little while. It was funny and embarrassing, just like the first one. My butt crack was even showing a little. But for some reason, this photo made me uneasy. Is someone following me? I wondered. Had some influencer punk started a one-man hidden camera show where he just waited for you to do something embarrassing? I stared at the other cars. Some of the windows were too tinted to see in. After a minute or two, I rolled out of there and drove off. At the bar, I was relieved and elated to find that Christina looked as good, nay, better than she did in her photos. Wow, I stuttered. You're beautiful. She also said the same about me, which I chalked up to having ironed the polo. Things were off to a good start. Throughout the date, Christina was bubbly and adorable. She told me all about her life in rural Nebraska and what brought her to the big city, but I couldn't pay attention to any of it. I really wish I could have, but I just couldn't get those damn airdropped photos out of my head. Christina left to go to the bathroom, and I took the opportunity to look around the bar, scanning the room for any familiar faces. Everyone looked engrossed in their own evenings and dates and cringy singing, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Hey, your profile says you really like to sing, Christina began with a smile. That was a fast bathroom break. But you never said what type of music. I stared at her, still a bit lost in thought, and it took a couple of seconds to register what she was saying. Oh, well, I like simple, boring things, really. Commercial jingles, recycling PSAs, communist propaganda, that kind of stuff. Christina smiled. You're not a communist, right? Of course not, I laughed. Let's go sing something. I got up from our table and offered her my hand. Good, because my parents always said that if I moved to the big city, I'd end up marrying a commie, and I hate to prove them right about anything. She giggled. Hey, baby, I'm so capitalist I changed my birthplace to the Cayman Islands. Christina giggled even more. Damn, were we getting along well. I got up onto the little square stage they had for karaoke singers and looked out at the crowd. Then I got a notification. You can probably already guess how it read. Anonymous would like to share a photo. Decline or accept. I looked out across the room, dumbfounded that Anonymous had followed me here. I thought about showing Christina, but decided it would just worry her, and even worse, prove her parents were right about the big city. I accepted the photo and startled backwards. My phone nearly fell to the floor. It was a photo of me at the bar, but not up on stage where it would have been easy for anyone to sneak a photo. It was from before, at our table, when I had turned to check out the other people. The worst part was that I was looking right at the motherfucking camera. My hand trembled. I tried to calm down. For some reason, I didn't want whoever sent the photo to know I was nervous. And I did not want Christina to think that I was scared to sing Ring of Fire in front of a couple of dozen farmer hicks. But it was obvious from this picture that the photos weren't just to be funny. This time, I wasn't making any faces, and my ass wasn't showing. My face in the photo was one of concern. How did I look right at the camera without realizing it? It struck me that the person sending these photos was going to extra lengths to remain hidden, maybe even as far as to camouflage themselves. They could be anyone, anywhere, with any sort of goal in mind. I shuddered. The music started up and Christina began to sing. I whipped around and looked at her. She was smiling, oblivious to the whole thing, and she looked happy. I didn't want to spoil this moment, which was probably the only truly fun one of my vacation, and the first time in a while that I was feeling some self-confidence. I began interchanging lines with her. I went down, 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 and the flames went higher. I baritoned into the mic. She winked at me. I made it through the song and asked her to get the hell out of there, to which she excitedly said yes. On the way back to my place, I thought about telling her about the photos, but didn't want to kill the mood. Still, I couldn't help but look through the windows of every car that we passed. I checked the rearview mirror for the umpteenth time, and a blue pickup truck was tailing close behind us. I made a right turn, then another, and the truck stayed close behind. After a while, I made 2 more right turns and the headlights disappeared from my rearview mirror. Phew. What are you doing? Christina asked. Huh? You just made 4 right turns. You went in a circle. Oh yeah, haha. I was hoping you wouldn't notice. I wanted to be smooth. Just made a wrong turn back there. Christina nodded and reached out for my hand. I checked the rearview mirror. More headlights. Another pickup. When we rolled into the parking lot of the motel, the truck behind us continued down the road, and I noticed it was red. I felt relieved until I pulled into my parking spot and hopped out of the car. Behind us to the right, the same blue truck from before was parked. Shit. He must have taken a quicker way over here. How did he know where I was staying? I put my arm over Christina's shoulder and rushed her into my room. After the deed was done, Christina promptly fell asleep, which I hoped was the sign of a job well done, and I decided to go for a walk in the parking lot. I wanted to figure out what the fuck was going on, but I didn't want to call the police before there were any real threats or anything. So, like every dumbass horror film victim, I went alone into the dark to investigate. I stepped out into the dark motel parking lot and eyed the truck sitting across the lot. Its headlights and grille formed an angry face that stared at me. I felt like it could read my thoughts. Leave, it said to me. Get out of here. You'll only get into trouble. The headlight eyes bore into my brain. Don't be dumb and you won't get hurt. A loud bang came from behind me. I spun around to see a dark figure turn the corner and disappear around the back of the motel. My heart started to pound, urging me to move my legs in either a flight or fight direction. I sprinted off towards the figure, and in moments I was turning the corner. Behind the motel, there were only tall, thin trees and a formidable darkness that shielded whatever had run away from me. I paused, searching through the trees for my stalker. I squinted but couldn't quite make anything out in the dark. Then I heard something. Behind me. Something was coughing. Slowly, with my eyes first, I turned around, and what I saw made my heart flutter. The sounds were coming from a dumpster, the kind usually left behind restaurants or apartment complexes that can only be moved by big semi-garbage trucks. From within the dark dumpster, the head of a terrible beast with a black mask rose up. Its mouth, full of razor-sharp, enamel-covered fangs, clamped down onto a chicken bone with a hiss. It was a raccoon. I laughed. There was so much pent-up adrenaline in my body that I couldn't help but convulse with the giggles. Soon, tears were spilling out of my eyes, and I had to lean on my knees to keep from passing out. You scared the shit out of me, I told the raccoon, and it scampered off into the shadows. I remained there until my laughter subsided, and when it was gone, I decided to stay a little while longer. It was a beautiful spot. Nebraska wasn't that bad when you got to know it. After a few more minutes spent collecting my thoughts and calming my nerves, I went back around the bend of my motel. I strode with new confidence towards my room, but still couldn't resist looking over my shoulder at the blue truck in the parking lot. Is there someone in the driver's seat? I didn't want to be paranoid, but there was no way to deny that I felt like eyes were burning into my back. I walked more quickly until I reached my door, unlocked it, and slipped inside. Acting quickly, I shut the door behind me and put in the chain lock. I felt safer in my room. That is, until I lay back down on the bed next to Christina. The instant my sweaty ass made contact with the crusty bed sheets, I got a notification. A lump formed in my throat and I grabbed my phone, but paused and said a silent prayer that it would just be a message of support from my mom, or a campaign donation request, or any other useless shit besides an airdrop before checking it. But I knew what it was, and looking at the screen only confirmed it. Anonymous would like to share a video, decline or accept. I gasped for oxygen. The humid air around me suddenly felt too thick to breathe. I accepted the airdrop and the video downloaded. It showed the door of my motel room. As I stared at the still frame, a new sense of anger rose up within me. Who the fuck was this anonymous guy anyway? Did he think he was scaring me? I mean, was he hoping that after seeing a few photos of myself, I would send him my bank information? It was pathetic. I decided that I had done enough cowering and whimpering. I didn't even play the video, but went to frantically jotting down a strongly worded letter in my notes app, threatening to call the police if he didn't stop stalking me and at least tell me what he wanted. I signed off by writing, "Wishing you the best, pissed off guy." I took a screenshot. Pissed off guy wasn't my best work, creatively speaking, but I couldn't think of any better names. I was too pissed off. I opened the airdrop recipients in the vicinity. Despite my newfound courage, I trembled as the airdrop recipients in my area registered on my phone. For some reason, I was afraid that Anonymous would pop up. Proving he was at the motel would make the situation feel more real. Up until that point, all he had done was send me some pictures. If I sent something back to him, would he get more aggressive? I stared at the screen, my heart beating faster than a Browning automatic could shoot hollow point bullets into a cheap motel room. One name appeared, Anonymous's iPhone. I swallowed a heavy breath. Was the air getting thicker? Slugs of sweat rolled down my face. I exhaled and sent my note to Anonymous. Shit, I thought to myself. What am I doing? I wanted to unsend it. For some reason, this suddenly felt like the dumbest thing I'd ever done. I watched my screen intently. The tension was so high my heart almost sprung a leak, and I was afraid my bladder just might. Thankfully, it didn't take very long to get a response. Anonymous would like to share some photos. Decline or accept. I hit accept the instant I got his request. It was a collection of photos. All the same, photos he had sent me before. My blood boiled and my face heated up. I work up the courage to talk to him and he just ignores me? I was starting to grow less concerned and more irritated by Anonymous's antics. But then I noticed something. The first picture of the most recent airdrop, the one where I'm asleep on a park bench and sporting a triple chin, had a red circle on it. The kind that you draw on a picture when you want to draw attention to something. Except there didn't seem to be anything particular inside the circle. I zoomed in, and my heart dropped into my stomach. Far off in the background, in the middle of the circle, was a man's face hidden between the bushes. He was wearing a dark hoodie that cast a shadow over his face, but zoomed in I could make out the details. He was bald, and most of his features were normal and indistinct, but his lips were curled up into an enormous, hungry smile, with too many crooked yellow teeth crammed into his mouth for him to be a normal human. His nostrils were flared, like he was breathing heavily. It gave the impression that he was almost lusting after me, like a beast stalking its prey. My blood pressure fell through the floor as I realized that he was looking straight at me. His ravenous chops were wet with saliva, itching to sink his teeth into my plump, dormant flesh. I nervously swiped to the next photo. Me in the gas station bending over to pick up my change. There was a red circle around someone standing a few yards behind me in line. It was the same man. He stared at me intently with eyes that were opened impossibly wide and drool dripping from the corner of his mouth. I nearly threw my phone in shock. He had been so close to me, and yet I didn't remember seeing him. If you weren't paying close attention, it would be easy to miss his inhuman features. I had probably been too distracted and embarrassed at having dropped my change on the floor to notice him. Damn, my social anxiety. The next photo was from the karaoke bar, the one where I was looking directly into the camera. Seeing me stare directly at the photographer without recognizing him or her made me queasy the first time I saw it. But now I was more worried about what was in the background. There was another red circle, in the dark hallway that led to the bathroom behind the bar to the left, but it was too dark to see anything in the shadows. I zoomed in and turned the brightness all the way up, and then I could just make out one thing. A crooked, yellowed smile pointed in my direction. Whoever or whatever he was, he had followed me for the whole day. The last photo was all black except for something Anonymous had written, also in red. It said, "I am not Stalker." Goosebumps popped up behind my neck and down my shoulders. That's when I remembered the video of me walking back to the motel room, the one I hadn't watched. With shaky fingers, I opened the video. It was centered on the door of my motel room. For the first few seconds, nothing happened. I thoroughly scanned the backgrounds and corners, making sure to search extra hard in the shadowy areas, but I couldn't see the man anywhere. Then he walked into the center frame. This time, he wasn't hidden. He crept towards the door, his arms remaining eerily immobile as he walked, and when he got to the door, pulled a keycard out and slipped inside. I gasped. When was this recorded? That question was answered for me when a moment later I walked into frame, unlocked the door, and went in. It was from when I came back after finding the raccoon in the dumpster, less than 2 minutes ago. I shivered. Suddenly it was dawning on me that Christina's breathing sounded different. It was just a little heavier and deeper than I remembered it being. Very slowly, I turned my head to look over at the other side of the bed and noticed that the lump under the covers seemed larger than it had been before. I felt the air. It was thicker and wetter than I remembered it being and had a warm, almost metallic smell. The body lying next to me wasn't Christina's. I froze. What do I do? Dear God, what should I do now? Slowly, I sat up and pulled my legs over the side of the bed. I thought about turning the lights on, shouting for Christina, trying to fight the stalker, but I had the gut feeling that she was beyond saving. Even if she was still alive, there was no way I could last more than a few seconds against this thing in bed with me. Whatever it was built for hunting down humans and tearing them apart. I casually mumbled, "Better take a shower," and crept over to the hall. Luckily, the bathroom was right next to the front door. Once I got in front of the bathroom door, I silently lunged for the front door, turned the lock as quietly as I could, and tried to open it without making a sound. Clang! I stared in horror at the chain lock I had set when I came in. Idiot! I heard a rustle from the bed. The time for stealth was gone. I yanked the chain out and swung the door open. In less than a second, I was outside closing the door behind me and then bounding towards my car. I turned it on and peeled out without even checking to see whether my visitor had followed me. I sped away from the motel towards the city and dialed 911. At the police station, I waited for the cops to check out my room. When they came back, they asked to talk with me. I was led into the interrogation room, and they started to hit me with some accusatory questions. They said her body was ripped into pieces and strewn across the room, everywhere except the bed. Imagining myself in that room, totally oblivious to Christina's organs and tissue around me, made me sick. It soon became obvious that the police believed I killed her. I tried to convince them that there was someone else in my room and told them there was video proof on my phone. I showed them the video that Anonymous had sent me. They were intrigued, but still skeptical. I was starting to get nervous that I wouldn't return from my lame-ass vacation for 10, 30 years when something amazing happened. Still in the officer's hand, my phone got a notification. Anonymous would like to share a video. Decline or accept. "That's him. That's the guy who's been airdropping me stuff," I said frantically. The officer raised an eyebrow. He hesitated, looked around, and after an agonizing pause, accepted the video. They hid the screen from my face, but from his expression, I could tell the video was something violent. All I could hear was an animal-like growl, heavy panting, and a guttural human yell. It wasn't until after being cleared to leave and given my phone back that I watched the video. Anonymous had filmed me leaving the parking lot of the motel, and then gone into the room and turned the lights on. The thing was standing in the middle of the room, only a few feet from the camera. It stared at the camera and gave it a slow wave. Its slender fingers seemed to pulse with excitement, and the creature wiggled them elatedly. It smiled, and its lips peeled back to reveal blood-soaked teeth. The room was covered in blood and body parts. There were intestines hanging off the lamp, what looked like a half-eaten liver soaking the office chair, teeth laid on the TV stand close enough to the camera to see that they were neat and white. I pictured him sucking them clean like cherry pits. The most disturbing part of all was a big piece of skin that had been ripped off like a sheet and laid on the bedpost by my side of the bed. In the middle of the skin was what looked like a belly button. I had been lying with my head right underneath Christina's drying stomach leather and never had a clue. After the camera panned around the room, it focused back on the man. He stood there for a moment, his chest rising and falling rapidly, eyes wide and hungry. Then he took a lightning quick stride forward, and the camera turned toward the door. That is where the video ends. Sometimes when I'm alone and get the feeling I'm being watched, I open my airdrop options to see if Anonymous is somewhere near me. I haven't ever found him. Earlier this morning, while on the subway, I looked up and had a heart-stopping shock. I was sitting at the end of one car and just happened to look through the window into the car behind us. There he was, the same creature that killed Christina. The doors were still open and I almost took off running, but he wasn't looking at me. He was staring intently and smiling at a woman on the opposite row. Every few seconds, he would lick his lips hungrily. I shuddered looking at his teeth because I couldn't help but imagine them cutting into Christina's flesh, piercing through her skull and ripping her teeth out of their gums down to the root. His prey had headphones on and was flipping through a magazine, totally oblivious to the terrible monster sitting just a few yards away from her. I took a picture through the foggy glass. You can't see the creature very well in the photo, but I can always circle him. Maybe she'll have to zoom in, and she just might need to turn her brightness up all the way, but I'll make sure she gets the message. I have no idea how to get the photo to her without drawing the attention of the creature, but I'll figure it out. We'll both figure it out. Wish us luck.